All right, guys, so we are live. First of all, for everyone joining us tonight, thank you so much for tuning in. We're so excited to do this tonight. And if you're tuning in after the fact, welcome. We've got a lot of great stuff in store for you. So first things first, hello, Gresham, and everyone from around the region tuning in. I'm Sasha Kelle, and I'm in communications at the city of Gresham. 2020 has proven to be a year full of emergency situations like our current pandemic and ongoing wildfires all along the West Coast. And tonight, we are so lucky to be joined by the emergency management experts from local, county, and state levels to talk preparedness. So to get started, let's go around and do a quick introduction to meet our emergency experts here tonight. I don't know about you, but I'm a sucker for a good icebreaker. So please introduce yourself and then share your favorite thing about fall. For me, aside from college football and crisp autumn mornings, I am loving this fall in particular because we are still able to complete our 2020 census through the end of October. So visit 2020census.gov to complete your census now and to make an impact in your community and our country for the next 10 years. So now that I've shared that awesome plug there for census, Kelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sasha. I'm Kelle Landavazo, the emergency manager for the city of Gresham. Gosh, my favorite thing about fall, well, it kicks off the eating season, right? Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I like that.
I agree. I'm a big fan of salt and straw flavors this time of year as well. All right, and then Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Douthit, and I'm the Public Information Officer for Portland Emergency Management and 911. And there's so many great things about fall, but I think the best thing is watching the Portland Timbers when they're in the playoffs.
Awesome. All right, and Miss Alice.
I'm Alice Bush. I am Multnomah County Emergency Management's Division Chief of Operations, and my favorite thing about fall is they get to wear hats and scarves, and not just wear them, but I get to see them. It's like a parade of art for me.
I love that. All right, and Matt.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Marhine. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Oregon Office of Emergency Management. And amongst other things, but the fall season for me is really that weather change. And most certainly near and dear to my heart is to say goodbye to the wildland fire season, as you all might be experiencing or have seen in the news. So super happy for the temperatures to be changing.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for everyone introducing yourself. Let's get started. I guess we just dive into this conversation. This topic is let's talk preparedness. So I figured we would just kick off with Preparedness 101. With the wildfires recently and COVID this year, we've had a lot of questions come in at the city level of how can someone begin to be prepared? What are the basic steps that people can take? Last month was National Preparedness Month, and we had some graphics that we shared about having 14 gallons of water stashed at home to be prepared. And a lot of people said that's just really unrealistic. They didn't think that they could store that much water. They didn't know, one, if they could afford storing that much water. So Kelle, can you speak to us a little bit about how the basics of being best prepared?
Well, thanks, Sasha. Yeah, it's a year to be prepared for sure. I think oftentimes when we talk about preparedness, we do jump, I think, too soon to the action items. You need 14 days of water, and you need supplies and training, and we always hear make a plan and have a kit and get trained, and it is important, but we don't really move the needle much in action because we don't, I think, spend enough time around awareness and true, understanding of the risks and the threats that we face. And I think 2020 has been an eye-opener to that. And I hope that it does, move people into the action, place, because it's certainly not enough to just talk about it. And I know hypothetically that we should be doing something. I think most people, agree with that, but the action just has not happened to a large degree to date. So I do think that is one upside to 2020. There aren't many, unfortunately, but I think that really is one. It's been, we have faced a worldwide pandemic and have had to do things that probably many of us never even thought about. And then the wildfires are just another reminder of the risks that we face. So I think that the first step, honestly, in preparedness is truly that awareness and understanding of what risks that we face. And then it's going to be individual. It's very individual. Preparedness there's not one size that fits all. The individual that, hikes and backpacks and lives off the grid as easily as, in the city, has a very different kind of risk tolerance than, the single parent who may be, relying on public transportation or whatever. I mean, there's just so many different nuances. So there's never one size fits all. And it's an important part of that plan, having that emergency plan, which is really, can be not much more than a true conversation with your loved ones about what are we going to do when this happens, and having that conversation ahead of time, and keeping the conversation alive. I don't think that we can any longer look at preparedness as a sporadic or a project or a checklist. It just needs to become the way that we live. It's integrated into everything we do, our ability to be resilient, and certainly understanding that not everybody has those capabilities. People have limitations to what they can do. So I think that's an important part of that conversation. But just having the conversation, starting the conversation, start talking about what about the next time, because there will be a next time. We will eventually get through COVID, but there will be another pandemic, and there will most certainly be wildfires, and there will be an earthquake. We just don't know when, and there will be flood. There's a really big buffet of things that will happen. So talking about those and kind of talking about what your risk tolerance is, what is okay for, what risk are you willing to accept by not taking steps, and then really taking some action to mitigate those. And so the planning piece is critically important. It is that first step, and it encompasses all those things. Having the conversation, speaking with your family about what you're going to do. Supplies are important. Having supplies is very, very important. We learned that in a big way. I think most of us, have had challenges finding toilet paper. So I think that's a lesson that has been clearly learned. But having supplies is important for sure, and water is vitally important. Probably the most important supply to store for the most part. Again, I didn't think I would ever have a difficulty finding toilet paper. As long as we thought the supply chain was moving. And then, getting some training on what we can do, what action should we take. But we just too often leap to all that, and people kind of get overwhelmed without kind of spending some time in that place of really awareness and kind of learning about what the threats are. But yeah, supplies is certainly a big piece of it. And then getting some training on how to react, whether that's, participating in the great shakeout that's coming up, right? When we get an earthquake, what do we do? But, that's part of that training. It's not exactly our instinct to take the action that we need to take. So we need to practice it. So those are all good things, and we need to keep the momentum going, because we do have a lot of interest in preparedness right now, and I am grateful for that.
Go ahead, Alice.
I know Kelly's thinking it, and that is community connections also, right? Getting to know your neighbors, and part of that conversation is, hey, man, if I ever need you, would you be able to swing by and help out? My husband and I actually got sick pretty early in COVID, and man, if it had not been for our disaster resilience team dropping off food, and they dropped off toilet paper. Also, I must say, though, that I was in the fire service in Y2K, and I had a pretty good store of toilet paper at my house already. So I lucked out, or I didn't. I was disaster resilience. I had some important supplies at home. But I think that those community connections, knowing your neighbors, having a really close connection with your colleagues at work and with your friends at church, or wherever you recreate. That's, I think, it's definitely who you know. It wouldn't have, it was very helpful to have that disaster resilience team for me and my family when we got sick. So I think, that and everything else that Kelly said.
Awesome. I know, to speak to both of your guys' points, there's so many resources for people as well. I know ready.gov had a ton of great resources for people to tune into, of plans to build with your kids, and a kind of a checklist of things to do with your family in case of emergency. But also at GreshamOregon.gov, we have tons of resources to help initiate those conversations with your neighbors about, maybe we do have a nurse that lives in our cul-de-sac, or having a neighbor who happens to be a firefighter and knows how to tie knots, because those things do come in handy. So knowing your neighbors and knowing the skill set around you is super important. And those resources are available at GreshamOregon.gov and ready.gov. Matt, did you want to chime in?
Sure. I think, all of those really good points, right? Our locals and really know how to connect with their community. And one of the challenges is we work on the governor's resiliency plan for the state to connect with 250,000 homes throughout the state on how to be prepared and how to further their family's resilience. Is a real challenge for people to look at these lists and look at the things that sometimes are very easily understood, like water. Everybody understands water. Everybody thinks, oh, that's an easy thing to check off, but it really is, to the points that were made, it really is an individual family tailored solution. So when those families find themselves in a place that they can't store that kind of water, or they do not have the resources to purchase that kind of water, there are plenty of other things on that list that really increase their resilience. So when we focus on that preparedness role about water as an example, and toilet paper and all these different pieces, each family is going to prioritize what their need is and what they find to be most important, which only furthers their ability to be resilient. And maybe they're going to need more support in water, or in toilet paper, or in medical supplies. But if they solve the list for themselves with the things that make most sense to them, they are going to be more resilient than if they don't take those steps, or if they let the list defeat them. And so our message is, most certainly, all of the national web pages, the state has a web page that talks about preparedness and at least 2 weeks ready. And the idea is to encourage people to take their care and their family's needs into their own responsible bubble and do the best they can, because that'll lessen the burden on the community having to do that for them. So great messages. The community connection couldn't be understated or overstated enough, but how important they are to get to know your neighbors and get to know those social services that might be around you. And then most certainly take those steps. You might not be able to solve them all with a completely outdated or updated kit and all the things you would ever need, but you can take steps that make you more resilient than if you didn't take a step at all. So really want to encourage people to be a little adventurous, find those creative solutions for their family. And I think that there's a significant ladder of assistance in place, and a lot of community members that would love nothing more than to connect with those families and help them be successful.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Kelly, you spoke earlier to training opportunities, and we actually had a question that came in from live on YouTube. Do we have training programs or materials for citizens for natural disasters?
Well, Do we, the city? No. I mean, there are different, we have lots of resources, but are we actually doing disaster training? And the answer is no, we're not. We have our Neighborhood Ready program, and for neighborhood groups that are organized with Neighborhood Ready, who reach out to us and would like some additional training, we will provide that. We partner certainly with the city of Portland on that. That has a robust net, they call it NET, but it's the Community Emergency Response Team training, which is very extensive and very robust. And we have partnered with Portland in the past at providing that training to some of our residents, because it gives us those economies of scale. And the training again is pretty individual. That's very, very comprehensive training. The Red Cross actually offers quite a lot of training as well through their app. Through some of their apps and their materials. It's pretty, it's good. I think their first aid app is actually very, very good. And I think Matt probably will chime in on some of the work that the state's doing right now around a new program that hasn't been formally launched yet, but it's getting ready. So I think that's going to be some opportunities for people as well.
Awesome. All right. Alice, did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think to Kelly's point is one of my favorite things about that community emergency response team training, and you can go online and type in community emergency response team, and you can look at the curriculum content. And I think it's a really good overview of what's in the training. And I have definitely found with, I've been doing this work for 30 years now. And I have found that when volunteers step forward and they say, hey, what do you need us to do? And I say, what are you interested in? And we kind of do that a few times. And when a person is interested in a topic, they engage in it, they learn about it, and they do very well. And that whole pioneer spirit, I think, has been skewed a bit in our current language. Pioneer spirit, I think, probably means exactly what it used to mean, which was I'm really good at this one thing, or these two or three things. And the pioneers, they pitched in together, and those that were good at bringing in the crop were doing that, and somebody else was working with animals, and the community came together, and that is where that disaster resilience comes in. And I think when you're looking for training, there's no need for you to try and if blood isn't your thing, then, you don't need to take the medical training and get really good at that. There are other people that really are naturals at doing medical provision. And then there's others that really enjoy learning about radios. And so I think just looking at the CERT curriculum kind of gives you the breadth of things that are kind of critical in a disaster. And then you can start looking into trainings that are going to teach you a little bit more about medical, or a little bit more about radios, or a little bit more about search and rescue. One of the most important trainings is that disaster psychology, the emotional first aid, and there's the trauma intervention program. That's an excellent trainer, because most of us are going to survive, and most of us are going to be pretty uninjured. It's going to be the emotional and mental impacts of these major disasters that really is going to take a lot of people who can be present for others in the middle of an emergency. So I think to Kelly's point is there's a lot of really good organizations out there that are offering training, and they specialize in that thing. And so they're really good at it. Emergency management agencies were generalists. So we're pretty good at telling you, this is the breadth of stuff that's going to happen. So there's the county's got a lot of connections as well. So if people are interested in getting more engaged, Multnomah County Emergency Management is another place you can go to express your interest, and we'll help direct you to training as well.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go into the next point here because I know this was a big topic, and I know there was a lot of questions that came in about this when we started talking that we were going to have this discussion, and that's about the public alert system. So as emergency preparedness, emergency experts, with the current wildfires that still aren't fully contained, we dealt with a lot of interest in public alerts. In fact, I think I heard that we had more people sign up for public alerts within that first week, than there were originally signed up for it to begin with. So that was really good that people were using those resources, but there was also a lot of confusion about, can I text a number and get public alerts? Is it different for this county? Is it different for that county? So let's kind of unpack that a little bit. Dan, do you want to kind of start that conversation about public alerts and how people can probably do that in Multnomah County, in our area, and how that can differ across the region?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Sasha. So I think it's important for people to know that we don't rely on any one way of alerting people in an emergency. We have a toolbox of options, and that includes notifying people through the media, through social media. And so we try to use whatever is going to be the most effective way of reaching people quickly. Now, in Multnomah County, we have a system that you can access through the website publicalerts.org, and it's a site where you can sign up and put your cell phone, your email address in the system, and it's tied to a specific address. So if we had to alert you to evacuate, if there was law enforcement activity in your area, if you had to take action to stay safe, we would likely use this system to reach you. During the recent wildfires and the poor air quality, we had over 60,000 people register within Multnomah County. It was just incredible how many people over a very short period of time signed up. So I would encourage people to go to the publicalerts.org website. If you're in Multnomah County, or actually any of the counties in the greater urban area here, you can sign up for the different systems that each one of the counties have available. In addition to the public alert system, I should just mention that we also have the emergency alert system that a lot of people are familiar with from TV and radio. Every so often, there's a test message that goes out. That's rarely used. It's more for something where it will reach it needs to reach a lot of people quickly, and the danger is urgent life safety. So it might be for a tornado or just something that's catastrophic. We also have the wireless emergency alert system that you don't have to sign up for. We don't use that very often, but we're beginning to use it more at the local level. Some people are familiar with that from an Amber Alert, or sometimes if there's a severe weather, you'll get an alert pop up on your phone, and it's not something you signed up for. That's the wireless emergency alert system. But for the purposes of today, I want to encourage people to go to publicalerts.org if they haven't already, and to sign up, whether they live in Multnomah County or any of the counties in the urban area.
And then just to clarify, and Dan, you can speak to this, not everyone can text the number that was going viral, correct? Like, that's not an accurate source. People need to go to publicalerts.org, right?
That's okay. Right. Yeah. During the wildfires and the air quality, there was a number that people were being told they could text in other parts of the state. And there are some parts of the state where you can do that, but it's not something that you can use in Multnomah County.
Sasha, I think you just called on me, and the reason I kind of unmuted and raised my hand a little bit is we actually, since the wildfire, have been able to turn that number on statewide. So one of the challenges that we have as a community is, how do we work together? All emergency alerts by state code and by process, it really happens at that local level. And so this ladder of assistance is used. So as we look at cities and communities that have control at some level, maybe they do or they don't, they go to the next level in that chain to get that support for emergency alert function. And Dan, masterful, well done on sort of the different components there. Emergency alert systems being an old analog system, the IPAWs, the integrated public alerts and warning systems, the wireless emergency alerts, all of those things are part of government structures to ensure that public warnings can occur. But that number that went out is actually part of a software package called Everbridge that allows us to connect with individuals who want to get direct messaging, but also it allows us to engage with all those government systems in a simple software interface. That's where that number comes from. As a text to that number allowed that application to get a hold of your phone number and put you into the alerts and warnings function. And one of the things that a lot of our communities are always trying to find ways to communicate with their public, not all of them can invest in those systems at the same time. But as a result of the fires, we have been able to engage that system entirely throughout the entire state. So that number does now work. And we're looking to figure out a way to make that a system that more and more communities throughout the state can take advantage of.
No, thanks for that, Matt. And this is something that still needs to be figured out at the local level. I do know for Portland specifically, we weren't planning to use that system that people text into, at least in the short term, because there was an additional cost for us to put it online. But it's definitely something we would consider in the future.
Alice, go ahead.
So one of the things in Multnomah County that's different than some of the other counties is that Dan and a team of folks across our county have been trying to make sure that we reach out to our BIPOC communities, our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and recent immigrants and folks who don't speak English as their native language. So there's, when you go on public alerts and you say I'm in Multnomah County, and of course Gresham and Portland are in Multnomah County, when you click on that, it gives you options, and there's both verbal and video directions on how to sign up in those other languages. And that's not necessarily something that the national systems have in place yet. That's something that Multnomah County and the city of Portland kind of are leading the nation in. The other thing is that it's an opt-in system. And during the Eagle Creek fire, a lot of people were like, man, I used that system and it didn't work. Nobody called me. Because you have to opt into the some of those systems. And so Dan outlined which ones automatically go to your phone, but that public alerts is one that people have to register for. And as you can imagine, there's some barriers to that. So I very much appreciated Dan mentioning that we don't, when we need to warn people, we don't just use one platform. We use as many platforms as possible. And we reach out to a lot of community organizations and we ask them to reach out to their membership. And so that's, if you're getting information during an emergency, odds are those folks hard at work in the first response community, emergency management, and your government are probably reaching out and trying to provide as much and as accurate information as possible.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that as the communications with Gresham. I know, we will use every resource. So not only do you have the public alerts that are going out county and statewide, I mean, we're pushing information out on Instagram and Facebook and Nextdoor. So it's really important that if you're on those platforms to follow your local government, follow your local agencies. Multnomah County and Clackamas County was nailing the communication during the wildfire outreach. Specifically for their county. And I know a lot of people were going to Instagram and Facebook for that information. So definitely want to encourage people, follow your local government agencies on social media because it's a major way that we use communication. Now, speaking about public alerts, we have a couple of questions that have come in live that you guys can hopefully speak to. So let's say communication and technology are completely unavailable. So everything we just talked about. Then what? How are you guys communicating with us? How is there going to be access to the citizens to know what the heck we're supposed to do? Anyone? Dan.
It's a tough question. It depends on so many things, but thinking about an earthquake massively disrupting communications throughout the region, one of the things that we would do is we would try to find, and we've had conversations with Oregon Public Broadcasting about how long it would take for them to get up and running again to be able to broadcast from their mobile. I think they have a trailer of some kind that can broadcast, but we would work to get the message out through whatever means are still available. So it's possible radio might be one of the early ways that we can do that following an earthquake. But We expect the phone system to have issues, and everyone is going to be trying to make phone calls at the same time, and that's not necessarily going to work. And so we would encourage people to try texting instead of making a phone call. But at least in the initial phase, right after an earthquake, it's going to be very challenging to get a message out. And so we would just use whatever the first thing that we can get up and running.
Dan, it kind of goes to what Kelle was saying earlier, having that self-resilience for these disasters, for these emergencies, being prepared as a household, as a neighborhood, knowing your people, knowing what you have available to you, and then waiting for that communication from the higher level. So I think that kind of goes to what Kelle was saying earlier. Matt, you were going to say something?
Well, just to add to that, one of the things that's amazing with the group of people that I'm enjoying this panel with is that they are awesomely creative, and they will find a way. And so all the way up to the state level, we have things like the First Informer law in state government that allows us to give credentials to those folks that Dan was talking about that need to get into their community, get into their radio station, do emergency repairs and things of that nature. And we've given them credentials so they can get through roadblocks and first responder stop points to make sure that they have first access. But we also have plans in the state to do things like set up a Civil Air Patrol airplane with a loudspeaker to go across and around the communities. We literally have talked and have plans talk about dropping leaflets from an airplane as we fly over an area. So one of the things that I've always enjoyed about emergency management, Alice and I are both in the same environment, 30 plus years of experience in this game, is that we find a way to communicate and to provide that best insight information to the public at really any cost. And whether we're talking about resources, we're talking about methods and technology, and or getting down to literally runners going from place to communicate, the systems we utilize are not only technology based. And so we can be quite creative and find solutions.
Awesome. So because of this, we've generated a lot of questions. Of course, people have kind of similar questions like, what about the big one? What are you guys going to do? And I think, Matt just really spoke to that. There's a whole team of people, local, county, state level, that are constantly working on ways that we're going to be prepared. Like, we might not have the answers because every situation is going to be different and completely out of our control. But there are a ton of different people constantly working on being prepared for those situations. So like Matt just said, flying a plane over to drop messages to people, like that's, gotta appreciate that kind of creativity. I hope we never have to experience that, but it's awesome that it's happening. Kelle, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah. I just want to circle back and just reiterate that we are always planning. I mean, we are working on it, and when it happens, people should rest assured that we are in here, whatever environment we're in. For this, for COVID, it has been this environment, which is a little weird, but we're always trying to solve the problems. Depending on the situation, and certainly with the earthquake scenario, what everybody needs to understand is there's going to be a period of time where you're getting nothing. You're not hearing anything. There's no resource. There is going to be a period of time where you're on your own. And that's why we just are desperately wanting to encourage people to take the steps that they can to really get through that period of time. And whether it's 3 days or 7 days or 10 days or 14 days, you do what you can, because that needs to be a really clear message from us and the acknowledgement of the community that there will be nothing happening for a while, because all the things that we're talking about we're always working on it. We're always trying to be better, and we're always trying to improve, but they don't happen overnight. And certainly with the earthquake and even with COVID, we have staff we have our people that are the responders that are impacted. So our ability to do the work is impacted, and it takes time to really get those things in place. So it doesn't happen overnight. And we just need to be really mindful about that, and that there are people, many of our neighbors, and residents who will not be able to be prepared. So the people that can, it's just a moral responsibility to do so, so that, number one, we can focus on the people who need the most help, for sure, as well as hopefully just helping those people ourselves when we're able to. So I just want to make that, again, a point that, yes, we're planning, we're working on it. There are great plans, lots of resources. We all work together to get those resources, but they don't come immediately.
One of the questions that just came in was, these are all great tips. It's a great idea to be prepared. With only so many people watching this live broadcast, how do we get this info out? So I kind of just want to kind of reiterate what has been spoken about here already is, these conversations need to happen outside of this conversation. You need to connect with your neighbors. There's neighborhood associations in Gresham and all throughout Multnomah County, all throughout the state. Connect with your neighborhood association, connect with your HOA, your friends, your family. Have those conversations, because eventually it's like a domino effect. We're all going to start talking about this and having these conversations. In fact, one thing that happened with the wildfires, I live like probably 6 miles bird eye view from Sandy, and I was really concerned. I was like, okay, winds are changing, things are happening. And I called my dad, and I have 4 sisters that we all live all over the region. And I was like, we need to have a plan. Where are we going to meet? Where are we going to go? We're going to drive to La Grande. We're going to get out of here together, and we're going to go. And so having those conversations, even though they might seem paranoid or dramatic, they're necessary. I know one of my sisters was like, God, you're so crazy. And it's like, no, I'm being prepared. So Alice, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to Matt's point about the plane with the leaflets, etc. As you can imagine, air support is going to be really important after a large disaster. So those like Kelle said, there's a lot of plans, a lot of ideas. And I think to your point, Sasha, is that the government is made up of your friends and neighbors, and everyone needs to do their part. And having one of the things that we did in the fire service is something called a community organization information network, or a trap line, where we would go into a community and we would say, where do you go to get information? And in my former fire district in Sandy, Oregon, anybody that's ever been to Sandy, they know where people go to get information. It's Joe's Donuts. And so the fire service worked with Joe's Donuts, and we worked on how is our fire department going to communicate with those places. No Place Saloon was another one, just an FYI. So we would work with those organizations, and we had a plan about, and those, we knew that because we were familiar with our local community. And when you move into communities the size of Portland or Gresham, that's a really big community. And so it was easy for me to figure out where I needed to go to get information to my community when I was in a small community. But now that I'm in Multnomah County, we really need communities to identify where are they going to go to get information, and then let their government know this is where we go to get this information. And when we don't have internet and things like that, then we're going to, resort to going out, just like we did in the fire service, and build a bulletin board and put that information there. So we need to know where those places are. And everyone has a responsibility to communicate to their government about how to make things better and how things work for them. So I think to your point, you have to have a plan. It's going to take us a little while. And I think I always would get those questions like, why hasn't anyone said anything about this earthquake? Or why aren't we getting this information out? And it really is going to take everybody to pull that information into their community. You are much better talking to your neighbors than I will ever be at talking to your neighbors. So it is kind of that personal responsibility, I think, that we need to really awaken in everyone about embedding it into our cultural norms, like Kelle said.
Kelle, did you have a comment that you want to add to that?
Oh, it was just, as you were talking about, the question about how do we get this word out, beyond, what the people that are watching, and I something that has just been on my mind is just normalizing the conversation. It should not be, or it cannot continue to be, this odd thing like, oh, you're one of those people, you're like a prepper. What it's just should be that we have got to normalize the conversation. So I encourage the people that are listening, normalize it. Just start talking about it. And again, there's no better time, because it's not, again, 2020, right? I don't think anybody would be looking at it like, oh, that's weird. Like that. I mean, anything can happen. And so I think the time is right to just start having those conversations. So normalizing that conversation is a call to action, I guess, to the community.
I consider myself an apocalyptimist.
That's a good term. That's a good term. So we have a lot of people asking for specific links that we're all talking about here. Just for everyone watching, once this video has ended, it will still be on our YouTube channel, so you can share it with your friends. But in the comments, we're going to post the links that we've shared, like ready.gov. That has a ton of great resources. Our GreshamOregon.gov website, your county, the state, we'll post these links so you can see them. But also a lot of this information is available on GreshamOregon.gov. And so we'll definitely link you guys there in the comments once this event is over. So we're going to move to the next part of our discussion here. And so this is lessons learned with COVID and wildfires. So I want to kind of just break this down. I know there's probably tons of lessons learned this year, and you guys could probably talk about this for another hour. But we do have a lot of other questions to get to. And so maybe if we could do like your top 2 lessons learned from COVID or wildfires, each of you, and then we'll go through the rest of the questions for, to complete our hour here. So as preparedness experts, what are some takeaways from our current pandemic and the wildfires that we've been dealing with? Matt, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, so most certainly COVID and wildfires, communications was a huge lesson for both of those environments, but yet very different needs for what those purposes was. So as we think about evacuations and emergency alerts and things of that nature, the lesson learned is to try to communicate broadly and as early as possible, while also sharing scope and concept with folks versus you're at level 1. A lot of people really struggle. What is level 1, level 2? What does that mean to me, and how do I interpret that? So it really highlighted the need to make sure you provide context and that educational information with the message so people could sort of anticipate. As much as we'd like to have the community as prepared for that message and understand exactly what it means from the community's perspective, but also to them, we found that there was a gap there, and they needed a little bit more context for some of those messages. So communications in a wildfire issue, big issue. And the COVID side, communications really around, I think a couple of folks, I know Kelle mentioned, so Alice and Dan, also all 3 of you mentioned the need for that equity and inclusion, and really making sure that you're tailoring those messages to the wide, diverse communities throughout Oregon. Not something new, didn't surprise us, but clearly lesson learned about some success stories there on how to connect with some of those communities. And really, we rely very, very heavily on our local community partners, because they're the ones that are as close to those organizations as possible. And we really utilize that chain and try to tailor those resources and support to those components. Today, as we deal with the wildfires, maybe a second lesson learned or a big deal for us is preparing people to understand what's going to happen to them when all of these programs and these federal programs come to play. There's a ton of uncertainty. There's a not understanding of what each steps are going to be and how long, and manage that expectation for the customers so they know when to generally expect some kind of reaction. And that's kind of a never-ending battle for all these different programs. But in the fires, it's become extremely important when we talk about debris management, when we talk about that direct housing mission and all these different tools that the federal government brings to the state of Oregon and we're able to make available to our local communities, that the lessons learned are these are complex government programs. There is eligibility and there's requirements to deal with. And we need to be as forthright and transparent and direct about those components so that everybody feels that they can be in control of what those next steps mean to them. So big deal for us right now as we try to make a difference to all these events.
All right, and Alice, why don't you share your two takeaways from this year, lessons learned?
Well, in the interest of time, I will say it's community connections. It was demonstrated again that those people that had the resource of friends are doing better than those who don't. And I think to Matt's point, the information that is coming out really quickly, and it's a lot. And the more connected you are to community-based organizations, I would recommend that everybody look up Oregon Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. And it could be that you are already part of an organization that is engaged in disaster response. And those are really great organizations to make sure that you're connected to the information as it comes out. So I think community connections, and that would be one. And then the second one would be community connections.
Sorry, awesome. Dan, why don't you tell us of a couple of things you've taken away this year?
I've got a lot of takeaways. I think we're still learning so much about this year. So much hit us so quickly that we haven't had the time to kind of unpack it and to learn from everything that we can. But I want to go back to what Matt said about equity and alerting. And one takeaway that I already knew before all of this happened, but just the importance of us getting our messaging out to non-English speakers. We do have a system, as Alice mentioned, that I think is a leader nationally. There just isn't much in the way of being able to send alerts out other than in Spanish in other parts of the country. And so with our public alert system, we really pushed the vendor to enable us to send alerts out in up to 10 languages other than English. But the system needs to be better than it is. And so I think we need to keep working on that, get more people signed up, and make sure that the messages that the system's putting out are understandable and will work for those communities. So that's one big takeaway. Another is, and this is more a COVID related takeaway, is the importance of food in our community. We have a lot of people that are food insecure. And so we've, as part of our emergency response for COVID, have put a lot of effort into ensuring that we can provide food to members of the community. And I think going forward, that's going to be another an area that is a point of emphasis for emergency management in a way that I don't think that we were expecting. And so that's another takeaway for me.
Awesome. All right. And Kelly, why don't you give us a couple takeaways from this year?
Yeah, just, I'm sure you're getting a theme here. We have always known that, disasters impact vulnerable folks in a much bigger way. That's not new, but I think we have witnessed it in 2020 in a way that cannot be forgotten. I mean, we must do better. And I think there's everybody's agreement on that. And so I know that certainly myself and my colleagues are very committed to that. But it was a big lesson, I think, because even though we've known it, we've worked hard on it, nobody was ignoring it. We just got to see it play out in ways that you just couldn't imagine. All of us have experienced in our community, lines down the street of people lining up for food boxes that you just couldn't imagine that those folks were, that they're in your community and the need. It's not that I don't think we've been insensitive to it. I just don't think it was exposed in the way that it has been exposed now. So that's a huge one. And then just another one that we've known, but the fragility of our supply chain in this country is something that is, of concern, and kind of drives home that point of having the supplies that you need, because I never would have guessed that we couldn't get cotton swabs, right, for testing, because wow, who would? You just don't think about these things because we have such abundance, and that but to understand the underlying, again, fragility of some of our systems has been very important, I think, as we move forward.
Awesome. All right, so we have a lot of great questions. So I don't want to say rapid fire, because I do want you guys to give your really great answers to them. But I just want to try to acknowledge as many as we can tonight. So Gresham Mayor Eccles is tuning in tonight, which is exciting. So thanks to Mayor Eccles for joining us. Oh yes, everyone say hello. She was wondering, what are the resources that we have for lower income families to build their emergency kits? Kelle, do you want to speak to that?
Well, the brief answer is none. As far as actually passing along funding to do that, we have never been successful at being able to do that. As far as buying things for people. So I don't know that that's a good answer, but it is the answer. Maybe Alice has something better.
Supporting those who need additional support has fallen to government and our community organizations. There's an anecdotal story that is pretty prevalent in disaster response, and that is that 70 to 80% of all disaster recovery is done by faith-based and non-governmental organizations. Governments are not funded to the degree that they would need to be to provide that social services safety net. We always fall short. We have a lot of programs in the county. SNAP is one of the counties, the county runs that program. We also work with a lot of community-based organizations who support food security. That's the work of Multnomah County. So I think there are a lot of systems and programs that you may not see the government teaching, but the government is teaching the agencies and community-based organizations that are teaching those programs. So we partnered with PBEM this past year and have been working with Home Forward and other affordable housing communities to do a lot of disaster preparedness education. We also used the Urban Area Security Initiative funding in past years to purchase preparedness kits for affordable housing communities that we combined with training. We have another grant that the COVID has definitely gotten in the way of us rolling out a lot of these programs, but we do have some funding streams from the state that OEM manages, or Oregon Emergency Management manages on behalf of our state, that we apply for, that we try and reach out to our underserved populations. We submitted a grant this past year. We were unsuccessful in getting that grant from the state for our preparedness advocates, which are members of underserved communities who do preparedness education. But we're going to try again, and we're going to try the Urban Area Securities Initiative grant funding. So there are programs. It's not necessarily that they're nestled. There's a lot of safety net programs in Multnomah County, but the preparedness specific programs are something that emergency management kind of works through those other programs. And then again, those grant opportunities, they just seem so small when you look at the need in a community. But I do think that there are a lot of programs out there, and depending on what people are interested in, we can write grants around that to do pilot projects, and that's how we improve our services. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in, though. I think we do really need to do a lot of work around our ability to actually get some of our money, government money, that we get through some of our, especially with emergency management that has so many rules about how we can get money to NGOs. It's difficult, and I understand it's big work to do, but we need to do better, because we know that much of the work that's being done out there is not being done by us. It is being done by those NGOs and the nonprofits, and we can't expect them to do all that work without some support. And so figuring out how we can leverage some of our funding that we do get for emergency management and work with our NGOs is, I think, we know that we know we want to do it. We know there's a lot of hurdles, and but we want to work on that. But again, another lesson learned. We want to help support the people, the boots on the ground that are doing the work, for sure.
I just wanted to, there's 7 departments in Multnomah County government, and between just 2 of them, we contract with 1,500 community-based organizations to do the work. So there, like Kelle said, 1,500, 880,000 people in the county. That it just, there is a lot of work to do.
Awesome. All right, thanks, guys. So we have only a few minutes left, so I just want to grab a couple more of these, maybe 1, 2 more questions. A big one is, our family is trying to design a place where everyone should meet in case of an emergency, such as an earthquake, but we're not in total agreement of where that should be. Do you have any recommendations on choosing that location and tips of how we can be best prepared as a family? Alice?
I just say pick 3.
Pick 3.
Let
okay.
everybody pick one. It's the one that you pick may not be the one that you're going to be able to get to. So having alternate locations, so maybe that's not such a bad thing that there's 3 ideas in the family.
All right. And then do we have this kind of spoke about earlier, but we didn't quite answer this. Do we have an alarm system for an upcoming disaster like the southern states do for tornadoes or hurricanes? Is there like a loud siren that will come on? Dan?
No, we don't. The closest equivalent we have is we could use the emergency alert system on TV and radio, and then the wireless emergency alert system on cell phones.
Okay. This was a big one with the wildfires. We see an evacuation level 1 within miles of our home. What steps should we take to be prepared? Who wants to? Alice?
The former fire, I'm like, I would say, we don't have sirens because when we have our big disaster, the earthquake, we're all going to know it. It's not like a tornado. So the level 1, level 2, level 3, and we all got to talk before we did this presentation. And so we're all in agreement. So I'm actually just speaking for all of us because I know we agree. And level 1 evacuation notice is, hey, there is a hazard in your area and we need you to start paying attention. This might be the only time we are able to get a hold of you. And we had a lot of questions during the wildfire of why is my house in level 1 and the house across the street's not? Then you're also in level 1. You need to pay attention. There's a hazard in the area. And that is staying vigilant, tuning into your radios. And there is an arbitrary line when we say, we think we need to tell all of these people to pay attention. That does not mean that everyone else shouldn't. It just means that we really want those people to pay attention. And we learned from Eagle Creek, we learned from the California fires that our level 1, our pay attention area needed to be a lot bigger. We were fortunate during Eagle Creek. California was not so fortunate when they made smaller be aware level 1 evacuation notices. So it's a hard question to answer during. So I'm happy that people are asking now, so they'll know in the future. When we say that you're on a level 1 evacuation notice, that means pay attention, stay vigilant. We're in this together. We're going to do our best to give you as much notice as we can, and we may not be able to give you more notice than this.
All right, guys, so it is 7 o'clock. We said we would wrap this up in an hour. I feel like we have enough information to talk about. We could probably sit here and talk for hours amongst us all. But first, I just want to thank all of you for being here tonight, taking time out of your guys' schedules to make this happen. We obviously had so many questions from the community, and this is just such valuable information. So Dan, Alice, Matt, and Kelly, thank you all so much for joining this conversation. For everyone viewing tonight live and for anyone viewing later, there are so many resources available. Definitely, if we're not able to add the links later into the comments, please visit GreshamOregon.gov. We have so many resources available on our website. Follow your social media challenge or channels of your local government to stay in tune and in sync. September was National Preparedness Month. City of Gresham, we had stuff on all of our channels. Multnomah County had stuff everywhere talking about ways that you can be prepared and the kits that you can build, the things that you need to have for your go kits. Those are all important information, and you can find that at your local county and state levels. So thank you all for tuning in. Please go home and be prepared, make the conversations happen, and do your census, register to vote. Be prepared. All right.